Good evening and welcome to another quick education session with Athlete PRX. I'm Kevin McPherson, and today we are talking about CrossFit and neck pain, of which quite a few of you guys will probably recognize that very few people complain about this in the gym, and that's because it is one of the least seen injuries that you will see with CrossFit. Now, in a previous discussion, I already pointed out that your likelihood of having an injury with CrossFit is on average or on par about the same as several other different sports, and it's even less so than certain sports, specifically things like triathlons or Ironmans or similar events. So, again, I'm going to speak to it, but know that it is not a very high prevalence injury. In fact, it's less than 10% on average, and if you get into the weeds of certain research articles, it's even less than 2% of those injuries that show up. Now, what we do know about the neck injuries that typically show up with CrossFit is that they are associated with the Olympic lifts, and more than likely they are associated with trying to dump out of an overhead position so that where that weight is overhead and it comes down either on the neck or the top of the head, resulting in the injury, which is a traumatic injury, and that arguably is not what I deal with the most when I am working with patients. In fact, I would say that most of the time the individuals I see will suffer from 3 different types of problems with the neck. And the first one is going to be a stiffness in the lower portion of the neck. I know more than often see this present in individuals who haven't been working out in CrossFit for quite some time, so they haven't really built up a lot of their mobility, so it's earlier on in the game. I will also see it with those people who, because of life or whatnot, tend to be a little bit more arched forward in their posturing. Now, with this one, the activities that bring on this pain that oftentimes is located right at the base of the neck are going to be wall ball type activities or other ones where the head is going up while you're still in a semi-flexed position. And the reason for some of this neck pain is because you're getting jammed in an area of the neck that should be helping you look up in order to receive that wall ball as it's coming back down. But because you've gotten stiff in that lower cervical spine, you end up getting jammed so that most of the motion is coming from here, and in order to make it up, you continue to just kind of wedge the back of your neck. So exercise number 1 for this type of problem is going to be cervical retractions. Not a very fancy exercise. In fact, if you do this in front of a lot of people, they might look at you kind of funny because it's also called the double chin exercise. With this exercise, you're simply taking your hand, it can be this portion of your hand, or it can be the very tip of your hand, and you're going underneath your nose, and you're pushing your head back. Just like that. Now, that should trigger a little bit of a stiff sensation as you continue to repeat that motion, and will start to back off more than likely. You can add to that a little bit of a neck lookup. So it's push back, slight lookup. And you'll see it's not a very big motion. So push back, slight lookup. Now I can look up further if I want to, but I do that through the upper neck. And you'll see that where I come back, I get it to my end range, and then here I create more motion. We don't need that, that's where you're already moving, so try to keep that sensation pretty low in the neck. Now the next issue that I run into for the neck is usually from a weakness in the front side of the neck, in an area that we call the deep cervical flexors. It's just a fancy name for the muscles that are right on the front of the spine that help keep you in a nice upright position. Now, as these muscles get weak, we can end up in a similar position where our head falls forward, upper traps have to turn on to kind of keep you upright, and then a very large muscle on the front of your neck, it's that V muscle that most people have, will kick on just to keep your head upright. So you end up kind of in this position. That's often a telltale that the muscles underneath the voice box are not working very well. Now, what ends up happening is because you've got these larger muscles that are really just designed to help you move in one way or another, they're now helping keep your head up. They get fatigued because they're not designed for that, and you end up getting kind of this general stiffness across the upper neck and the top of the shoulders. Sometimes we'll call it myofascial pain syndrome. That is really kind of balanced out best by working some of these muscles in the deep neck. So I'm going to tilt this screen down so you can see it. I've got my Facebook feed going on this side. This side I'm just going to have to move the video down with me. So on here, what we're trying to do is lay flat. Your head is going to tuck. So it's almost like you're making that same double chin. And from there, you're going to lift your head up and just hold it there. Try not to let your chin come up. If you do, you're using that same V muscle that I talked about before, which is the sternocleidomastoid, and we don't need to use that muscle. Let's get everything back up here. Now that's a little bit more of an endurance type exercise, and because it's endurance, you end up doing sets of somewhere around 10 seconds based off of the literature or off the research. Now, the last, that's the second exercise. The third exercise that I'm going to give you is really to help out a deep muscle that runs from the shoulder blade into the neck, and that's called levator scapulae. You don't need to memorize it. It's just a muscle that runs deep to the upper trap, and oftentimes we can get a little bit cranky in that area because of some of those same postural changes that we've done. Now, a stretch for this one is done by kind of anchoring that muscle on the shoulder blade down. And you'll see that this part of my shoulder, as I reach up, will kind of arc a little bit down on me. Well, we want to move that position or that top, that little angle here of the shoulder blade down because that's where that muscle inserts. So we do that by just putting the elbow against a structure or a wall, and then from there you're going to turn your head somewhere about 45 degrees, and then you're just going to bring your head down or your nose down to the ground. So it looks like this. If you get in the right place, you'll feel that stretch from here to here. It's nice deep. In fact, on some people it can trigger a little bit of a headache. If it does, don't worry. It's just a response of a muscle that needs to be relaxed. Now, I'm going to give you a couple of twofers real quick, just because I've got you on here. And twofers by way of just ways to help yourself out. So first and foremost, if you're doing a lot of upper body activity in that week, and we're talking about more of that pressing, that overhead press, or you're doing a lot of handstand work, sometimes those muscles will get a little bit more work, and their response is more of a headache type sensation. Whereas if it was the legs, you might feel some of that pain with getting in and out of a chair or something similar to that. Here, it's going to oftentimes be headache or this just deep ache on the backside. That is a good indication that you've probably done a little bit of extra work that week, and it's a good time to go get some body work done. Now that could be by way of massage therapy, or that could be by way of manual therapy or manipulative therapy, so hands-on work. That is provided by me at Athlete PRX as well as by other professionals. So that's one indication that maybe it's time to get a little bit of body work done because you have done some effort on it. The last thing that I'm going to provide to you guys is just a little bit of a cue for some of the newer practitioners, and that's going to be when we're doing kind of that bear complex where we're up here and then we do that catch on the back of the neck. So catching down. A lot of times that can spring in a little bit of pain right here on the neck, just on that bone. The reason for that is oftentimes that the shoulder blade is not set. So if I'm here and I drop that down, it's going to land right on the bones of my neck, also called the spinous process. However, if I do a little bit more of that contraction, kind of similar to what you would do if you were doing a high bar squat, then I drop it on that. That's a lot more muscle that's taking that load. It's less impact on a bone and more on soft tissue, and it feels much better. So if you're getting a lot of bumps and bruises on the very tip of that bone on your neck, the spinous process, there's a fair chance that you're not creating that shelf with the upper trap to help catch that weight with it. All right, guys, so I've given you 3 exercises. One is to help out with some mobility down low, looking up. One is going to be trying to build up some of the strength in the front of the neck, which helps take some of the pressure off of these muscles through day-to-day activity. And that's going to be laying on your back, a little chin tuck, and then just elevating your head slightly off of the ground. The final one was that levator scapulae muscle. We're giving a nice stretch to that. And then our 2 cues or ways of knowing that it's time to get a little outside help is that you have a bump in your symptoms, a lot of tightness after doing a lot of handstand or overhead work. And if you're getting a nice bruise in that center area, there's a fair chance that you're landing that bar on your spine as opposed to using the shelf of the upper trap. So that being said, I'm just seeing if anybody out there has any questions. If not, I'll go ahead and taper this off. In a couple of weeks, we'll have another one of these live question periods. Again, I'm trying out both platforms, be it Facebook as well as the YouTube feed, and we'll see which one gets a little bit more traction as we go forward. See Lindsay's on there. Hello, Lindsay. Hey, Cody. Thank you guys for jumping on. I don't appear to have the same thing over on YouTube, but it is what it is. All right, without any questions, thank you guys very much for your time if you're watching it live, and thank you very much for your time if you're watching it after the fact. Outside of that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the week, and I'll talk to you again in a few weeks. Bye.